Let's face it, film editors don't get the respect they deserve. If you've ever edited anything like a video podcast, you know how challenging editing can be on any level. And if you're watching the show, you could recognize that there's a rank amateur behind the scenes, yours truly, doing all that editing. I appreciate the skill even more now that I've gotten my hands dirty in it. But we often overlook film editing when it comes to movies and TV shows. Yes, we honor and celebrate directors and screenwriters and actors, understandably so. And then we forget about people like the film editors who make it all possible. And I'm as guilty as everyone else when it comes to this area of filmmaking. Full confession. Well, let's change that just a little bit, shall we? One of the things I've been dying to do on the new video podcast is shine the light on the behind the scenes experts who make everything we see better and brighter, like John Quinn. He's an award-winning film editor who's done a lot of different projects over the past 20 years, including The Chosen. Yeah, you may have heard about that little TV show, which basically changed the face of faith-based content. It's an amazing series, and he's a big part of the reason why. But John's latest project is something similar. Same director there. Dallas Jenkins is behind both of those projects, but it's called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And it's available now on video on demand and also still in select theaters for the holidays.
It's going to be the best Christmas pageant ever.
That's a pageant I'd like to see.
It's a wonderful story about these rapscallion kids who invade this Christmas pageant, and what happens next. Now, when you watch the film, you think, oh gosh, this is funny, it's heartfelt, there's a lump in my throat happening as this movie kind of veers into the conclusion. And listen, you blame the screenwriter, you give credit to the director as well, the talent behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, and the editor who made it all possible. And in this case, that's John Quinn. Looking ahead to 2025, I'll be doing more interviews like this with people whose skill sets are vital, necessary to the filmmaking process, but just don't get enough attention. Well, let's start with that right now. Here's my conversation with John Quinn, a talented fellow, a guy who makes the work we see even better, and someone who's going to shine a light on film editing. It's a huge topic, and we can't do it all justice in a quick conversation like this, but I think you'll have a better appreciation for the film editing craft, and maybe the next time the Oscars or other award presentations are going on, you'll pay extra attention to the editors because they truly deserve it. Well, John, thanks for joining the show. It's something that's been on my plate, my to-do list for quite some time, to interview people in the arts who don't get enough credit, who do this amazing work. And I think the average movie lover or TV fan just doesn't really grasp the skill that you bring and your colleagues bring. But I want to, before I even go there, I want to just talk, maybe just give you a little bit of biographical background. How did you get to this position where you're an editor and obviously doing great stuff, but how did you get here? Because I think everyone's journey is often unique.
Yeah. So I grew up with, I was a big, huge film nerd, and starting in junior high, I started making dumb movies with my friends with the family video camera. And I just did that forever. And then it was in high school that I found out about Columbia College Chicago. It was in high school that I discovered editing, taking, two completely different images and joining them together, and the emotion or the just what it creates. And so went to film school, came out to California. I only knew like two friends out here. Luckily, an alumni connected me to the post-production team on a Robert Altman film. And so I was a post-PA on a Robert Altman film. And so I got to watch all of that process. Yeah. And then I
not
went
too shabby,
that,
right?
No, not too shabby. Oh my goodness, that was insane. And then I worked on a John Woo film, and I was the post-PA on that. And then I did like low budget Sci-Fi Channel movies where I was an assistant editor, got bumped up to editor, and just been climbing out of that B movie world for like the last 9 years or so. And things are good. Things are good right now.
Yeah. Now, I mean, doing those films which don't have the prestige of an Oscar bait movie, but obviously they're still entertaining and fun. It sounded like maybe in a secondary film school for you. What did you learn through those years?
I learned what you could do without a budget, like without being able to do a reshoot. How you can solve problems with ADR, with rewriting lines, through ADR, and just problem solving, which is and that was over 10 years I was doing that. And it was just 10 years of problem solving with no money.
Yeah.
So, and I learned that I love one of my favorite things in the world is to drop temp music into films and
Mhm.
television shows, which is one thing that I think people don't realize is that films are not, the composer does not begin working on the film usually until the editing is done, and it's the edits are not going to change anymore. But
Mhm.
in order to present the cut to a director, producers, the studio, you have to have music in there. And so we take old film scores and we
Mhm.
put them into the movie to create the right emotion and the right stop and start point and stuff like that. And then composers tend to use that as a sort of a roadmap.
Yeah.
And so I loved every moment. I think one thing that people don't realize about the low budget things that people think, oh, that's just crap, is that the people that are working on it, they do love it. They want to be,
Mhm.
they are trying to do the best that they can with considering the circumstances, which are usually limitations of budget or
Mhm.
time or the script, and sometimes it's not even the screenwriter's fault. It's the producers, it's the network that's saying you got to do this, got to do that. But I loved and tried to make everything I worked on good, from
Mhm.
magma volcanic disaster to Lake Placid 2.
Nice. Well, before we get into one of your more recent projects, I want to just, when people think about film editing, the layman, the average person, what do they not understand about it, or maybe are there any misconceptions about the work you do that you can clear up?
Well, I think when people think of an editor, I think folks think, okay, the director, the production people, they film only what you basically are seeing.
Mhm.
I think people think, oh, all we're doing is just removing the slate and removing,
Mhm.
we're only using parts between action and cut.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so what they don't realize is, for instance, I was just finished the shows in season 5, and there's a scene in there that is 7 minutes long, and they shot 6 hours and 20 minutes of footage for the 6 minute scene. I don't think people
Yeah. Yeah.
understand that they shoot every scene that you see on television, even reality shows. They
Mhm.
do it over and over again, from multiple angles, over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, and it's up to the editor to figure out what the first shot's going to be, and the second shot, and the third, and so
Mhm.
on. And there's no roadmap. The director is not telling you, okay, I want this take, this angle for this moment. We're figuring that out.
So I imagine that there's a collaboration between you and the director throughout this process, though. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the editor gets to do his or her cut first, and then
Mhm.
the director comes in, and then you get to collaborate, and then you get to sit in the room
Mhm.
together, or you work remotely, you get notes, and then it's called the director's cut because it is
Yeah.
the director's cut. It is their version, and yeah, it's a collaborative process.
Yeah. And I
And then
imagine the all the experience you've had up until now lets you sort through all that footage and maybe cut out the stuff you don't need more quickly, where you have a seasoned eye where you think, okay, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this. I can kind of whittle it down a bit. Is that fair to
Oh
say?
yeah, I've gotten so fast and have created one system, one way of
Mhm.
doing things after another. I still listen to podcasts and read interviews with editors, and just to find out, because here's something that's interesting. Not every editor is different. The way they attack a scene, the way they organize their footage, everybody's different. There isn't like this one way of doing the job.
Mhm.
So I have figured out a way to review all the footage, and that's the thing. I'm not
Mhm.
taking. It's not like I've reviewed the footage and I'm like, oh, take 3 was the best, so I'm going to use take 3. No, I'm actually comparing every single line, like every line, every moment, every beat. I'm
Mhm.
watching all of the footage, sentence by sentence, to find the best performance. Everything is
Mhm.
Frankenstein. I might have take 3 here, and then all of a sudden I'm going to take 1 there, and bouncing around.
Yeah. One of the things I've always thought through the years is when I watch a trailer for a comedy, I often find that the editing, the way it's all packaged together, is tighter, funnier, more on the nose in a good way. And then I watch the finished film and I'm like, oh, the trailer clip was actually sort of presented better in a way. Any thoughts on that? Is that a neophyte
Well,
weighing in on editing, or what are your
well,
thoughts
I
there?
don't know. I don't know if this has ever been told, but So I met with the trailer person. They interviewed for to be an assistant editor of mine, and I found out that the trailer people received the dailies on big shows, Marvel movies, big
Mm.
comedies for big studios. The trailer people are receiving the dailies, and they're actually doing an assembly of the movie. And so because of that, you will see in trailers they're using different takes, even different
Mhm.
performances for these things. And you're right, because it's a trailer, it has to be really fast, and sometimes that what you're seeing is a
Mhm.
completely different cut that they're not even taking from any edit that's ever done by the actual editor and the director. So
Yeah.
that could be what it is.
It's
But
just so interesting.
that is the reason why
Yeah.
it's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to your newest project, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It's a wonderful film. It's sweet, really kind of gets to you when you watch it, which is great. And it opens with a lot of humor, a little broad, a little slapstick, on the nose, funny stuff. When you're doing humor, give us like kind of a little inside perspective on creating that kind of an opening, because it really does set the stage for the movie. And once you get settled in, the humor isn't as broad, isn't as sharp, because you're telling a story. But I think that opening is it kind of seals the deal in a way. Talk about that for me.
Okay. If I could talk about that, how we put together that opening.
Yeah.
All of that is right out of the book. All right. It's written right
Mhm.
out of the book. And our director, there's a lot of wonders in there, and so the director knew exactly how he was going to shoot it, how he was going to frame it.
Mhm.
Um, that being said, as far as figuring out what was the funny, um, I was so me and my assistant editor, we kept track of things that made us laugh out loud the first time we saw it. It's very hard to remember how
Mhm.
it made you feel the first time. So we have a whole system in Avid where we write them, we do up a marker that tells us on a scale of like 1 to 5, if it made
Uh-huh.
us laugh out loud, we definitely make note of it. So we never forget that. I mean, look, when, the scene where the kids are throwing, all the rocks and the acorns and leaves at each other.
Mhm.
I was reviewing the footage with my daughter. My 12-year-old daughter was in the room, and I was like, comparing the different takes and everything. And like, for instance, when Gladys has her mouth open and you see those teeth missing, and she just looks so funny, evil.
Mhm.
My daughter laughed out loud. I'm like, all right, that's going in there.
Mhm.
And on this movie, my director, he was really thinking outside of the box. He did not want this to look like another like Hallmark movie. And
Mhm.
so so on the script, he referenced all these different shows and movies. He referenced Jojo Rabbit and the TV show The Middle. And
Mhm.
so based on like what he would, and Wes Anderson, obviously, some people have actually mentioned it in reviews that this movie feels like if Wes Anderson made a Christmas movie, like everything is symmetrical, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so in putting together that opening, thinking outside the box, I actually originally cut it to an AC/DC song. I originally cut it to Dirty Deeds, and it was fun and it was awesome, and we even tested
Mhm.
it with that. And then we just got some feedback, and it's like it needs to be tighter, it needs to be shorter, and so
Mhm.
we just kept on making it as tight and as fast as it could be, and still actually putting the voiceover in there, and timing it out, and we tempted, and then we tried another song. We used Chuck Berry's Run Rudolph Run. But it was a long process of over the course of 4 months, always going back to that opening and just tighter, 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 but still keeping that humor and track, and keeping track of what made people laugh out loud.
Yeah.
At the test screening, we recorded the audience, and we could hear their, we recorded the audience, and we were able to play back later, to remind ourselves of what made people laugh, and
Mhm.
just not ruining that, not removing anything.
No, over the years, we've known like Martin Scorsese works with De Niro and DiCaprio. They have this relationship. They know. I guess they kind of can sense each other's thoughts, or they just know. They just have a body of work to fall back on. They've got a sense of their artistic sensibilities. You've worked with Dallas Jenkins both here and also with The Chosen as well. I imagine that comes into play, and there's sort of a shorthand there when you're working with someone over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. But on this on this movie, a lot of what he was saying, at least in the beginning of our editing, was this is not like The Chosen. Don't do this. Don't cut this in the way that The Chosen is cut. No, we should not be doing this. Let's not do that. And then sometimes he would say, let's cut this like The Chosen. Sometimes it would be intentional. So there definitely is a shorthand. It's, I mean, if you're going back to talk about The Chosen, every season that I've been doing this with Dallas, I'm getting less and less notes. We're getting through our remote sessions a lot faster because I know his sensibilities. But this was a completely different animal. But there were still, just a certain language that we have. He says to do this or do that, and I don't have to try and understand what he's saying. I know exactly what he means. And there's an internal rhythm to it, and he knows it, he feels it, and I feel it too. And it was fantastic. And I think that's maybe why he brought me onto this, is because he knows that it's, when you hire an editor, when you're working with an editor for the first time, I mean, it's like you're dating, it's you don't know each other that well. You don't trust each other. And so I think that's maybe why he brought me on, onto this project.
I don't want to mention any movie names or obviously any editors in your field, but when you're watching a movie, editing is off, for lack of a better explanation. What does that look like to you? I mean, you're an expert. I'm just a movie viewer, but when you're watching a movie and you can tell that the editing, something's not right, is it just that the jokes aren't landing and the emotional beats aren't as strong as they should be? What's a sign of bad editing and when you're watching a project?
I don't really, when I'm watching a movie, I rarely ever think the editing's bad. And I definitely don't think it's the editor's fault. I never think someone is a bad editor because I don't know what the dailies look like. I do feel like whether it's a horror film and say there's supposed to be a jump scare and I'm not feeling it. It's not so much the edits, but I think it's like, if I watch a film that's supposed to be scary or, and I'm not feeling the scare, but the music is telling me that, I think that's bad storytelling, maybe bad filmmaking. Yeah. I feel like a comedy that isn't making you laugh, it's not so much if the script and the actors aren't funny, I don't think there's that much that you can do with the edit. There's not that much that you can do to pull out laughs. You can go back into the dailies and look at things and try. Look on the best Christmas pageant ever. After one of the test screenings, and it tested well. It's like we had to make it more. We're trying to get more laughs. So the order was, okay, go into all of Pete Holmes's ad libs, and so it was great to get that freedom. To, okay, we don't have to stick with the script now. We now have the freedom to try and play with all of Pete Holmes's ad libs and Judy Greer's ad libs. And a lot of that is not a lot, but it's in the movie, when Pete Holmes answers the question about, you always said to tell the truth. That was totally an ad lib. And Judy's response was an ad lib. And I love that Dallas and the studio wanted to, keep that in there. Judy Greer explaining what break a leg means. That was a total ad lib. I don't even know if Judy thought that would make it in the film, but those guys were just always on. Those guys were always on.
Great combination. I think Judy Greer is one of the most, I mean, she works constantly, but I think she's underrated. She's so talented. And I really enjoyed, I don't know if you saw Pete Holmes' show Crashing about comedy. It was brilliant. It was on 3 seasons of HBO. So when I saw these two together, I'm like, oh, that's
cool.
gold.
No, I haven't. I want to check that out. I just want to tell you about Judy Greer. No actor has ever done this. So I'm watching the dailies, and my assistant editor comes in and he says, "Hey, check this out. Hit play on this timeline." So I hit play, and so it's before they called action. They did the slate, and then it's Judy Greer sitting in the church. She's maybe, I don't know what she's looking at down on the screen. And then she looks up the camera. She looks right at the camera and she says, "Hi, John." She waves to me and says my name. No actor has ever done that. And so from then on, I mean, I already adored her. She's so funny. She's so talented. But from that moment on, I was like, oh my gosh, this woman's incredible. And I will do everything in my power to make her look good.
I mean, I think it's a sign that she gets it. She understands what your work means to your role.
Yeah, she understands the process. I love actors that get that. And they, especially, you can tell, if they flub a line or something, they understand where they need to go back to, and they understand editing. There's not a lot of them like that, but they're out there. It's really interesting to
Gotcha.
see people like that work.
Yeah. One last question. If you mentioned you were a film nerd when you were younger, it certainly describes what my formative years as well. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. If you're someone who is maybe in their mid to late teens and they're thinking about film as a career, I know it's a very challenging profession for sure, but how would you guide them, steer them, even advise them if they think that the film editing process is something that appeals to them, sort of the creation, the stitching things together, making great moments happen? What kind of advice would you give to them as far as things they could be doing now to kind of edge into that arena?
Oh, fantastic. I would say just create and edit. There's just so much you can do by making your own movies. I think it's really important we have so many books and videos and interviews out there. You need to listen and learn the process from the masters, the people that have come before us. Just creating and also don't have fun. But if you're seriously going to go for this, there can't be anything else that you want to do or can see yourself doing, because it is hard.
Yeah.
The job itself isn't hard. I love it. The hard thing is the hustle, trying to find work, trying to get hired, trying to get connected. But another thing is that's really important to knowing the process is, learning, knowing how to edit. It's also really important to know how to build relationships, build friendships. I think 60% of like building a career is actually relationship building and being, humble and kind and knowing that, you're going to start at the bottom and you're not going to just, all of a sudden be handed, a Marvel movie to cut, but that's it. Just, relationship building. And I mean, and the thing is they could start that even now, and I think one thing that's really amazing about this era that we're in is that you don't have to necessarily come to Los Angeles or go to New York. Great stuff is being made all over the country. So, but anyways, but as a teenager, I would say just edit, just, download your favorite movies and create movie trailers or music videos and just edit so that it just becomes part of your DNA. Because that's the thing. I think one of the reasons I'm so fast on when I'm editing is that I'm not looking at the keyboard. It's like I think it and boom, it just happens because I know the keyboard so well. It's like a piano. I'm not even looking down at the keyboard,
Yeah. And real quickly, any software program that you like for, fledgling editors, any favorites out? Obviously it's not a plug, but just advice for, things you think that maybe are
well, I would say, well,
flexible and powerful, but not too hard to master.
Yeah, I think if a young person wants to learn editing, if they have a little bit of money, Adobe Premiere is fantastic. It's number 2 to Avid. Avid is very hard to learn and it's not very intuitive. So I would say start with Premiere. If you have no money, DaVinci Resolve is great because they have a offline edit free version. I would even look into Premiere. There might be I think Premiere has student discounts and stuff like that. But I would check out Premiere, DaVinci Resolve. Take a look at those.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. And of course, you can see John's handiwork right now, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It is available in theaters and also in video on demand. You always want to see it in the big screen. That's always the best way. But if you can't, video on demand is a good second choice. It's a sweet, wonderful film. And I you never know what's going to happen, but I think people can be watching this each holiday season. It's got that special something to it. And of course, got to give a lot of credit to you. I know it's a collaborative effort, but the film editing is a huge part of it. John, thank you so much. And thank you for kind of broadening our knowledge of this arena. I think people just don't know enough about it. I know I don't as well. It's one of the reasons why I was so happy to have you on the show, but best of luck to your future stuff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's it for the bonus episode of the Hollywood in Toto podcast this week. If you're curious about other topics that you haven't seen on the show and you want me to kind of dig deeper into them, or if there's a guest you'd like to see on this particular program, why don't you let me know? You can always reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is Hollywood in Toto. Or you can just kind of go old school, which sadly, email maybe now is old school. Go, I was going to say go analog, but I'm pretty sure that's a digital format. You can email me. It's christian@hollywoodintoto.com. Show suggestions, things you'd like to see more of, things maybe you'd like to see less of. And if you've mentioned me, then I can't really help you there. But everything else, I am open to constructive criticism. I went to art school for a very long time. I've got 3 art degrees that I've yet to actually use in any capacity. But when it came to creating art, I was always open to criticism. What could be wrong with that? I could process it. I could learn from it. I could discount it. But same thing goes for this podcast. Let me have it. Let me know your thoughts. Always trying to make the show bigger, better, and brighter. So I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you again. And thank you again to John Quinn for sharing his thoughts and his craft with us this week. We'll talk soon.